Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Monday's afternoon's class. Today we're going to work on a lecture to review some of the things that we want you to be thinking about for the two writing tests on the IELTS exam. And we're going to lead up to the end of the lesson where we're going to give you some activities to do and help you get started on your homework. So for many of you, this is a review, but we want to start with the overview of the two tasks on the academic writing tasks. Task 1, we recommend you spend 20 minutes on this. It's to describe visual information, and you'll have a diagram, a chart, a graph, a map, or a table, and it's your job to put words to the information represented by the data, the numbers in the charts. Most commonly, you're going to have charts, graphs, or tables on task 1. You may get a diagram. You may get a map. So you have to be prepared for that. But again, most likely, your test will have you working with a chart, a graph, or a table. Task 2 on the writing exam is worth twice as many points as task 1. So we suggest that you spend 40 minutes on task 2. And here you're going to write an essay. And you may be asked to provide a solution. Most often, compare and contrast different ideas or opinions. We're going to be asking for your opinions here. Evaluate a problem or challenge an argument or an idea. Most commonly, we're going to be asking you to state your opinions about an abstract question. So there's no right or wrong answer, and we'll be continuing more with that. So again, task 1. Need to work through rather quickly, 20 minutes. It's worth half as many points as task 2. And we'll continue on. How is your paper assessed? Very important here. Is your writing easy to understand? And for those of you who are writing this test, is it neatly written? And I'm raising my voice here because I know some of you, I've been talking to you about this. And the only way to improve your handwriting is to practice. But if you turn in assignments to me now and I tell you that I'm having a difficult time reading them because they're not neat, that's going to cost you a lot of points on the exam. So between now and the day you take the exam, one of your biggest priorities is to practice writing neatly. And we'll have more information about that in the future too. Are your ideas well organized and clearly linked? So well-organized ideas, we talk about that in the outline and the paragraph structure of your answer, your response. And we're going to be talking more about this today too now. We're going to be practicing some linking words. And in the grammar books, we also often call those cohesion devices, the way that we put the essay together. Another thing that you're graded on, did you use a wide range of vocabulary and grammatical structures, different verb tenses, accurately and effectively? Very important to do to get your scores up into those higher bands. And then specifically for task 1, we say, did you answer the question fully and write 150 words? You're allowed to write more than 150 words, and that's not a problem. But if you write less than 150 words, you'll have points deducted for that. So that's going to be very important, and we're going to give you a little trick today, a little advice to help you with that. Task 2, did you answer all of the points in the question? Another very important part here. You need to take the time in the beginning to analyze the question. And as you're structuring your answer, make sure you answer all of the points. And also very important, did you provide a balanced argument? There's no right or wrong answers here. So you have to acknowledge the good points and the bad points of both positions. The example we often use in class, do you prefer eating at a restaurant or eating at home? Well, there's times that we prefer eating at a restaurant, and it's a good thing to do. There's times that we prefer eating at home. And you have to discuss the good and bad of both points. What are the features of both? Your argument needs to be supported. Your ideas need to be supported with evidence and example. Evidence come from the real world, or maybe your own personal experience. But this is the important part too here. Were all of your ideas relevant to the question? So later on today, we're going to be talking about the impact, the effects that the internet has on people's ability to socialize. And so if we're talking about socialization and keeping close to people, it's irrelevant. It's not relevant that the internet helps you do your homework. It's a good point maybe, and it's very important for other discussions. But as you're working on these task 2 ideas, answers, always need to think about what's relevant to the question. If it's not relevant to the question and you include that on your answer, you'll have points deducted. And for task 2, same thing as task 1, a little bit longer. Did you write 250 words? If you write 249 words, you're going to have points deducted. Okay, next slide. Describing a chart, a table, or a graph. This is the writing task 1. And this is most common in all the exams. Again, you might get a diagram, you might get a map. But for the most part, you're going to be describing a chart, table, or graph. And you get the data, you get the visual information, and you have to put that information into words. Maybe think about, pretend like you've read this information now, you've analyzed it, and now you're going to explain it to somebody who hasn't even looked at it. So you're not going to talk about colors, you're going to give words to the numbers. When you're describing a chart, table, or graph, test strategy, answer 3 questions first. First thing you do when you look at the visual data, what is being measured and how? And you'll remember that these charts, there'll be information on the left, maybe it'll be dollars and millions, and there'll be informations at the bottom. So you have to make sure that you're reading what information they're giving us on both of these axes, up and down and side to side. Also very important, is there a time element to the information? If yes, what is the gap between each year shown? So we've done enough work now to where some of these graphs are continuous, there's no stops, and then a lot of the bar charts go from maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years different. It might have information at the bottom, 1960, 1980, 2000. This is also important when you're deciding what verb tenses you're going to use in your answer. So we need to identify that. And then the last question to answer, are there 2 or more things being compared, and what are they? And those are most often at the bottom. Or if they have a chart, a line chart, they'll have different colors for those lines. Very good. How to achieve a good score on task 1. We must give an overview of the main information in the graph. I think most of us remember now that first line of task 1. The chart shows, the graph shows. We'll give you some different language to vary that, but that first sentence of your introduction is, tell us what information is in the chart. It's also important that we paraphrase here. If you use too many words out of the question, you'll have points deducted. So you'll recall we did a task 1 writing assignment on the travel habits of people traveling to work in Houston. And instead of repeating people who are traveling to work, we use the word commuters, which is the definition of traveling back and forth to work. So that's something else that will help you, and with a little bit of practice, another little thing that can raise your score on your test. Very important. You have to select and report the main features. It's up to you to what to write about here. The most relevant and significant information is going to be maybe the highs, the lows, and then that thing that we talked about, the trend. What does the overall information tell us? Are things increasing? Are things decreasing? Were things steady? Did things fluctuate? So we want to talk about the trend in our response to task 1, 2, and then compare and contrast. Point out the key differences and similarities in the data. And we'll be talking more about this as we finish up the course this year. You have to pick out the important information. 150 words, that's not a lot of words. So you want to make sure that you're talking about the most important information, and we're not writing about insignificant or unimportant information too. Only include information that is represented in the data. We do not give our opinions here. We don't draw conclusions. We report strictly on the information. So we don't want to, if we get a task and we did one like this, the amount of pollution or CO2 emissions from different types of travel, and I remember many of you wrote about, and that's why it's important that we use electric cars, or that's why more people should ride bicycles. That's your opinion. That's your conclusion. If you can't point to the information in the chart or the graph or the table in task 1 and point to it and say, this is where it says that, don't include it. We'll get into opinions on task 2. That will be very important. No opinions on task 1. And then again, really important here, an easy thing to practice, write at least 150 words. Plan, outline, practice. So I already said, many of you, especially some of the boys, you need to practice your handwriting. If you turn in an answer that's very hard to read, you're going to lose a lot of points. And some of you need a lot of practice on this. But your handwriting will not improve if you wait until 2 weeks before you're going to take the exam. That starts now. We're going to need to practice on your handwriting. You only have 20 minutes. The recommended time for task 1 is 20 minutes. And so you need to identify the most important information in only 1 or 2 minutes. We're going to be practicing looking at a lot of these graphs and working on our time management the rest of the year too. Time is going to be very important to get a good grade. And to help you plan your answer, you need to write some words that you're going to use and then write an outline. I'm saying this in task 1, we'll say this in task 2, but you need to write an outline to structure your response. Include some of the languages, maybe include some of the verbs that you're going to use, include a couple of adjectives, rose steadily, decline sharply. Write some of that down and include it in your outline. And within 5 minutes, we want you to have identified the most important information and written an outline for your answer, and that gives you 15 minutes to write that 150 words. Final thing that we'll tell you, we'll repeat. Make sure your handwriting is neat and legible. Neat and legible. The person has to read it. If you make them work really hard to read your handwriting, you're going to lose points on your exam. And one of the things that we want to practice a little bit, we want to work out how much space 150 of your words take on a piece of paper so you don't have to count. I've been watching some of you as you're doing the writing assignments, and if you spend time counting and counting and counting, you're losing valuable time where you should be doing other things. So you'll be surprised at how easy you can judge how much you have to write without actually counting. Maybe at the very end you do a final word count, but we want to work on that too. Very good. One of the things that you may have to do on task 1 is take a look at 2 maps or maybe 3 maps, and we've done a couple of these this year, and describe a change in place. Describe a change in place. And usually this has to do with buildings, maybe a map of your city. They often do maps of villages. We've seen a couple of those. I want you to take 2 minutes. You've got some verbs up here that describe changes in place. And I just want you to take 2 minutes and see if you can match the verbs to their definitions. So we have add, remove, expand, modernize, extend, replace, reconstruct, improve, renovate, reduce, and develop. 2 minutes and see if you can match these definitions. If you have your dictionaries, use your dictionaries, but matching the verbs describing a change in place to the definitions. We'll give you another minute and a half. This verb list is something that you should be able to learn in the next few weeks. These are all very common, especially in the building industry. And if you get a map, it's probably going to be to describe a change in a place, and you're going to need these verbs. And even if it's not for the exam, These are going to be some important words for you to have in your vocabulary. I'll give you an extra 30 seconds and we'll check the answers. And I'm going to supply my students with copies of this PowerPoint. And what I've done is I've taken an outline out of a Cambridge IELTS preparation book, and I created this outline, this PowerPoint presentation. Okay, we're going to move along here. Describing a change in place. If we make something bigger, we expand something. Make something new again, renovate. We often renovate homes. We renovate furniture. Maybe we renovate an old home and make it look like new. To make something modern, modernize. The root word modern, modernize. Take something away and put something else in its place, replace. Take something away and put something else in its place, replace. The prefix re, to do something again. Make something better, improve. Make something smaller, reduce. Build several buildings in an area where there was nothing, develop. For those of you who are living in Ho Chi Minh City, District 1, and maybe not even District 1 anymore, but there's a lot of developments. The big tall buildings that are going up, we often describe those as developments, where there was nothing there before and they build the big tall skyscrapers. Put in something totally new is to add. Take something away, remove. Build something again, reconstruct. So if something is damaged, maybe you were driving your motorbike and you had a motorbike accident. Oh no. You have to take it to the shop, the repair shop, and get the mechanic to reconstruct your motorbike. Build something again. Build it back to the same way it was. And then to make something longer, our verb there is extend. So I'm going to give you these answers. I'm going to give you this handout, but these are going to be important verbs for us to memorize. Just some final tips for the task 1 writing assignment. Your answer must be accurate. You must accurately describe the information presented in the visual, and that's just as important as your language. If you write something, if something's very well written and you have a lot of good vocabulary, a wide range of grammar, but your information is wrong, you're not accurate, you're going to lose a lot of points. You want to be thinking about that. Conclusions. Don't draw conclusions that are not supported by the information that you are given. Most of us do pretty good on that. Some of us are still giving our opinions and conclusions in task 1. You must stop that. And our new rule is, if you give me something in task 1 with an opinion, I'm going to ask for you to point to me on the data, on the visual aid, where you get that information from. If you can't see it, if you can't point to it, don't write about it. Study each visual carefully and practice picking out the major changes the figures show. Explain what the data is showing. So again, the major changes, the important information, and I like this word, practice. Yeah, this is something you need to practice too. You need to spend some time looking at some of these charts because we're going to start working on speed now. We're going to start working on speed. You need to be able to do this part of the assignment really quickly. You have about 1 or 2 minutes to get that done. You're describing a pattern. You're telling the story and identifying the highs. And the word we used in class was peaks, like a mountain peak. What's the high point of the information? What's the lows? And then we talked about periods when the numbers or figures remain steady and periods when the figures fluctuate. So if there are big changes, that's a fluctuation. If there are little changes, it's a pretty steady change. So fluctuate and steady. We want to point out those different periods of time. So you might have information, you might have data that shows something along here where it's fluctuating a lot, but the overall trend is it's increasing. Or you might have information that just goes straight up. So you have a steady increase, or you might have an overall increase with a lot of fluctuations inside the data. Okay, also very important, at the end, Make sure that you leave time at the end to check your writing, and you need to make sure that your facts and your language are accurate. 150 words, I think you need at least 3 minutes. I would prefer 5 minutes, but I think you need at least minimum 3 minutes to be able to check your facts and your answer. Writing task 2 consists of 1 or 2 statements on a topic or direct quotation giving someone's opinion. You're going to have a specific task or question for you to answer. And when we get to this practice today, the final part of the question is very important. These questions come in 3 sections. They offer the opinions, they ask your opinion, but then they tell you to address specific information. So the final part of the question is going to be very important. It tells you what you must include in your answer. Planning and organizing your ideas. The first thing you need to do is decide on your position or your attitude. What do you think? And that's going to be very important. And you're only going to have a minute or 2 to do that. We're going to ask that you write down some ideas about the topic as you prepare to organize your ideas into paragraphs and write your outline. Check that you have enough ideas. If you have an opinion for, an opinion against, if you have many ideas for and only 1 idea against, you definitely need to be thinking about, the ideas against. So you need to have balance. You should have about as many ideas and reasons for and against as you're answering these opinion questions. Write an introduction and a conclusion. Also very important. We've been practicing that enough. The introduction restates the question. Once you have restated the question, and remember we want you to practice paraphrasing, if you use too many words from the question, the same words, and just repeat what you've read, you'll have points taken away. But after you've restated the question, which is the first sentence of your introduction of task 2, the rest of your introduction could, not must, could. So this is where your styles and your individual preferences are going to come into play here. You're going to get to make more choices in task 2 than you did in task 1. So again, the rest of your introduction could give your interpretation of the ideas in the question. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Explain what you intend to write about. I like to try to keep it simple when we're trying to learn how to write some good answers. Your introduction is you're going to restate the question, and you're going to tell us what you're going to write about. And then maybe you'll have 3 or 4 paragraphs in your body, and that's going to be your ideas, your examples, your reasons. That's when you're telling us your ideas. And at the end, summarize the topic or question through a new question. So maybe you can ask another question. Very good. I want you to try to take a minute to work on this. Cohesive linking devices, connecting your ideas. And this is really important. Some of you are more advanced at this now than others. But let's just take a quick look at these words. And these are words that we use to connect information or sentences or more likely clauses. And we have 4 columns here. Which of these words do we use to add more information or clarify a point? Which of these words do we use to show contrast or present the opposite view? Which of these linking devices, cohesive devices, the ones that connect our ideas, do we use when we're going to give an example? And then in the end, in your final paragraph, which of these words, which of these linking devices do we use to draw a conclusion or introduce a result? I'm going to give you 60 seconds, which is going to be a little bit of a short amount of time to accomplish this today. But go ahead, see if you can put these words into the correct column. And we'll do the first one together. Moreover, moreover. Very similar to and that's to add more, clarify a point. Most people in Vietnam ride motorbikes to work because it's much more convenient. Moreover, it's probably the cheapest way to travel too. Yeah, adding more information, clarifying a point. Take 1 minute, see if you can put these linking words into the correct column, and we'll have a look. And I want you to use this when you're doing your writing assignment today. So again, I'm going to have this handout printed for you. When we return to class, when we return to school next week, we're getting all good news about the health situation. So we're going to assume, we're going to think positively, and we'll be back on Monday, and I'll be able to print these for you so that you have something you can use while you're doing your writing. I understand that you probably did not have enough time to finish all of these, but let's just check the answers for today. And this is something you'll be able to use when we get to our writing assignment. To add more information or clarify a point, all these words work very well. Moreover, furthermore, indeed, in addition, and we probably would say in addition to, similarly, and in fact. These are all cohesive devices, the linking words, when we're going to add more information or clarify a point. This one is another important one. We're going to add some more words to this list, but I just took these out today. To show contrast, and another way of saying that is present the opposite view. Words like but, however, and I did not put those in this list today. If somebody says but or however, they're giving us a contrasting view or a different point of view from the earlier part of the sentence. And then some of these that you might not be as familiar with. Although, though, despite, in spite of, nonetheless, and whilst. So one of the things we'll be talking to you about through the remainder of the year is we're going to want to use some variety in our writing too. If we keep using the same sentence structures and repeating the same words, it's very boring for the reader, and also it will cost you points on your exam. So one of the things that we want to work on with you the rest of the year is going to be some variety in our language, and really that's using synonyms and paraphrasing. Also the proper use of pronouns. To give an example, my favorite one, for example, yeah? But if we keep using for example, again, we're repeating ourselves and we're going to lose points, and it's also just not an interesting read for our reader. To give an example, such as, for instance, instead of for example, I like that. That alone will help you. And then to illustrate this, a little bit more formal. And then words to introduce our conclusions or introduce results. Therefore, consequently, thus, as a result, and hence. And I will say some of these words are a little bit formal and very British English, but something for you to look at. I want you to get comfortable with maybe 3 of these from each column so that when you're reviewing and writing your answers, you can put some variety into your tasks. Reaching a conclusion. You need to write a conclusion. It should be a brief summary of your argument, your opinion, and ideas. And it's really a good place to give your opinion here in your conclusion. Again, you have a little bit more flexibility in how you structure your task 2 response. But it's very important, and we'll be talking more about this too, that somewhere in task 2, you're clearly stating your opinion. If I'm not sure what your opinion is, that's something that's going to cost you a lot of points. You won't have answered the question. Some language, some phrases to use to introduce our conclusions or to show results. In conclusion, to summarize, to conclude, in summary. I think we all use those pretty well. I took this from the book as far as I am concerned, but now that I look at that, I think that might be a little bit informal. So task 2, we're using formal language. We're not using abbreviations. We say goodbye, we don't say see ya. We don't use contractions, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Task 2, test tips. The score you get for task 2 is 2/3 of your total writing score. And you must express your opinion using your own ideas. Must, no choice. This is probably the most important part of your task 2 writing. What's your idea? And be very clear about that too. Spend at least 5 minutes planning your ideas and include only information relevant to the topic. Same as task 1. If we're asking you about the effects of the internet on socialization and people being friends or connected, it's not relevant that the internet is really good to help us do our homework. The internet is really good for business. You will lose points if you copy words from the question. Make sure to paraphrase the ideas, especially when you're restating the question. It's one of the first things they check for, and it's something you need to practice. We often practice paraphrasing. We practice synonyms, and we're going to start practicing that in our classes to make sure that we develop that skill. Again, the book says leave at least 3 minutes at the end to check your writing. I like 5 minutes. When we do this, I like 5 minutes. I think if the book says 3 minutes and you're comfortable with that, we'll let you do that. But I think we're going to try to do 5 minutes of checking. And here's where you're going to check your spelling, punctuation, and grammar. When I was at work back in Chicago, I had a habit where I would never give someone something I wrote the same day. I always said that I needed one night so I could do my writing, proofread it, and then put it away. And almost every time I came back the next day and reread it fresh, I found mistakes. I found things that I wanted to do over. Now, you can't wait until the next day when you take your IELTS exam. You have 1 hour. So this is really critical, important. You must leave some time at the end to check your work. And this is what we were just talking about a little bit earlier. Need to use formal languages. We don't use abbreviations. We don't use bullet points. We don't use casual language. No see yas, no I'm gonna, no contraction. In our speaking, we often say, hi, I'm Jim. When we write that, hi, I am Jim. No contractions. The only apostrophes should be to show possession. In red, I could call out some of your names. You must write neatly. If your writing is not legible, if you have sloppy handwriting, start practicing now. It's a discipline that you have to work on. I was just talking to one of the teachers here, and the question I had was, why do the girls mostly have such really clear handwriting and neat handwriting, and it's always the boys that have such sloppy handwriting? And I'm one of the boys that was like that too. My handwriting is not so good, and we're all using computers. We're all using keyboards and electronic devices now. It's something you must practice. This is a question that we're going to start, and it's going to be your homework. But we're going to give you a chance to get started on this, the preparation. Task 2 question, and I told you that it often comes with 3 parts. The bottom is always write at least 250 words. The internet allows us to stay connected with each other no matter where we are. On the other hand, it also isolates us and encourages people not to socialize. So there's balance there. Allows us to stay connected no matter where we are. But on the other hand, contrasting idea, it also isolates us, keeps us away from people, connected, isolation, and encourages people not to socialize. First question. To what extent do you agree or disagree with these statements? So we're going to have to give your opinion. But remember, it's going to be very important that your opinion is balanced. And then also information that must be included. Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant, repeat, relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Gosh, the internet really helps me do my homework, and I'm able to look up really interesting topic. It makes me a better student. Is that relevant to this question? I don't think so. It's an important point in the overall discussion of the internet. The internet makes us much more efficient in business, but that's not what this question is asking for. So relevance is a place where people lose a lot of points on their answers. Write at least 250 words. Again, you can write more than 250 words, but if you write less than 250 words, you will have points deducted, taken away. The final part of the question is very important. It tells you what you must include in your answer. You must include your own opinion about the statements, to what extent you agree or disagree. That's your opinion. And the reasons for your opinions. So that's two things. What's your opinion, and then why? This is what I think. This is why I think it. You can include, so that's not must include, but you can include examples from your own personal experience, but be careful. These personal experience must be relevant to the question. One of the things that we want you to do and start practicing now for task 1, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and I don't know, we don't really have interactive here, but we'll be back on Monday, and I'll be checking the assignments that you turn in. First thing you do on task 2, read the question, and in about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you need to decide on your own personal point of view and think about your own personal experiences. So you don't have to have your own personal experiences in the answer, but you must tell us your point of view. You must tell us what your opinion is. Take 2 minutes. This is going to be the start of your homework. Let's go back. Decide on your opinion. And here you don't have to write in complete sentences. This is to prepare your outline. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? The internet allows us to stay connected no matter where we are. I think we can all agree with that. But on the other hand, it also isolates us and encourages people not to socialize. So here you have to really choose one side or the other. Choose one side or the other. And there's no right or wrong answer. All you have to do is give your opinion and then tell us why you have that opinion. And then if you can think about any relevant examples from your own experience, that could be really helpful. But again, nota bene, NB, be careful that you're writing about relevant experiences. You can have some really interesting points. You could have some really well-written stories. But often people get in trouble here because those are not relevant to the question. So another 30 seconds. What's your opinion here? Overall, on balance, do you think it's more true that the internet allows us to stay connected with each other no matter where we are? I think most of us have to agree with that. 50 years ago, we didn't have computers. We couldn't even afford to make telephone calls. We could barely write letters when we traveled far away. But now we're connected instantly on Facebook and Zallo and Zoom and all those fancy apps that you young people like to use. But here's the other part, the balance. On the other hand, it also isolates us and encourages people not to socialize. So I think you can come up with some really good examples to support this opinion, this idea. But here you have to think a little bit more. just give you a few more minutes on that. Very good. Let's finish this up. I want you to write this question down. I want you to write this question down. The internet allows us to stay connected with each other no matter where we are. On the other hand, it also isolates us and encourages people not to socialize. To what extent do you agree or disagree with these statements? Give reasons for your answers and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words. This is a question that appeared on the IELTS exam. This comes from a book that takes the old exams and puts them in the practice book. I'm going to give you another moment to write those questions. Very good. I want to finish up with, we have the first activity where we write down our opinions and relevant experience if we want. But this is an important chart. This is going to help you before you write your outline. We need to provide a balanced answer that looks at both sides of the question equally. A balanced answer. If we have all the reasons for and only one reason against, that's not balanced. They're looking for about 50-50. So we need to think of some ideas and put them in the correct columns. Agreeing with that position. The internet helps us stay connected. That's one of the good things about the internet. It's one of the best things about the internet. Keeps us connected with people from all around the world. We're able to share information like we've never been able to before. And then you also want to complete the column, some ideas against. The internet isolates us. People are changing. People are changing. I'm not as familiar with the internet and some of the online activities as the younger generation, but I'm still amazed that young people are able to network and play video games together from different houses. That didn't exist when I was young, and that's not that long ago. I know I'm not a young man anymore, but I'm not an old man yet either. It's changed very quickly. So again, your homework for tonight. Task 2 question. You're going to write 250 words. Make sure you get this written down. The internet allows us to stay connected with each other no matter where we are. On the other hand, it also isolates us and encourages people not to socialize. That's something I could write about a little bit more. To what extent do you agree or disagree with these statements? And then give the reasons for your answers. Try to think of some examples, some relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Talk about something that you've done. Talk about somebody in your family. So again, 250 words. Is this due for Wednesday or when they return? Okay. Must do tonight. Must do tonight. No staying up and playing video games tonight, Miss Tu. Mr. Munn, you must be writing tonight. All right, so again, we're working on the assumption, and Miss Fung, I didn't forget about you either. Teaching online, learning online, it's the best we can do right now. But again, we're working on the assumption that we'll all be back together on Monday. And I hope to be able to really practice a lot with you and improve your writing. I think it's the one area where with some work over the next few months, we can improve everybody. I want to congratulate the people in my classes. I've seen some really great improvement. We've seen some outstanding scores on some of the practice tests already. And remember, when we give you those practice tests, we're giving you real tests. We're not giving you the baby tests from the practice books. We're giving you real exams. And I won't embarrass anybody and call out some of the top scores, but we've had some really good success. But most importantly, I'm really happy to see improvement. As long as we have a trend where we're getting better and we're learning, that's what's most important. So again, practicing, we're going to give you some advice, some tips to complete these writing assignments. But for things like your handwriting, start practicing now. Start practicing now. Set a timer and practice writing for 15 minutes. We can give you some resources where we can give you a lot of these tables and charts to look at. Start practicing being able to find the important points, the main story, the big trends in about 1 or 2 minutes. So we've been working up to this, and when we get back on Monday, one of the things that we have to start doing is working on the clock. You're not going to have unlimited time. So in order to do a good response for task 2, we need you to complete task 1 rather quickly. And it's a long test. The speaking test now, as I understand it in Ho Chi Minh, is done on a separate day. But your reading, writing, and listening, that's 3 hours of exams all at the same time. Really challenging. And so we're going to start working on the clock a little bit more. I'm assuming you've gotten your questions written now. This is really important. After you've completed your ideas and you have balance, after you have completed your ideas and you have balance, you have about as many for as against, then it's time to write your outline. So really important, especially with the time constraint, with the little bit of time that you have, we need you to be able to do this rather quickly. And it's like any other sport. It's like singing. It's like dancing. We need to practice. We need you to practice. We need you to practice all parts of this. Do not wait until 1 month before you're going to take the IELTS exam to get very serious about this. I've been told that it takes 60 hours of instruction and practice to improve by a half a band score. So to go from 5 to 5.5, 60 hours. So to go from 5 to 6, 120 hours. That's a lot of time. And my best recommendation too is get some materials. You should be reading some English language articles. You should be reading some English language texts. And you don't have to do 2 hours, 3 hours a night. If you can spend a little bit of extra time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 4 nights, 5 nights a week, that is much more effective than, So, think of some ideas and put them in the correct columns. The internet helps us stay connected. Well, yeah, what are some good ideas there? I'm at work, and I've got my computer in front of me, and I go home, and the boss realizes that I forgot to turn in my assignment. And instead of waiting until the next day and being very angry with me, the boss is able to send me a message, send me a text, and we're connected, and it helps us get our job done. But the isolation, I think, is important too. And think about COVID now with these lockdowns. And it's not even so much in Vietnam. Vietnam, we're actually very lucky. But places like America or England, people are really suffering. When you have to spend time by yourself, when you're not able to go out and socialize, that's very hard on the mind. That's very hard for the human being. So this isolation is something that we need to talk about. In the old days, when we did not have all these networks and the internet, people had to come together. People had to meet face to face. And that's still my very strong preference. If I were going to answer this question, I would take the opinion more of this. I think there's a real high cost, a very high cost to the isolation from all this networking. I think that young people sometimes don't learn the social skills that I learned when I was your age. So again, Make sure you complete a balance chart. You need as many ideas for to answer this question as against. And when you finish this, before you begin writing your response, you need to have a written outline. Is that it? All right, so listen, make sure you do your writing tonight, 250 words. And I look forward to seeing everybody. I believe we'll be online Wednesday, but I'm especially looking forward to seeing everybody next Monday when we return to school. Take care.